Good evening. If you would, please silence your cell phones if you haven't already done so. Please be advised that our proceedings this evening are being recorded. For those physically present in the council chamber who desire to address the City Council, please complete a request to speak form. They're available at the front entrance and presented to the City Clerk. Speakers physically present and those participating via Zoom will be called upon at the appropriate time, and each person is allowed 3 minutes speaking time. If you're joining us via Zoom, please send a message to our City Clerk letting her know that you would like to speak. So at this time, I will call to order and convene the regular meeting of the City Council for Tuesday, May 24th, 2022. Tonight, our invocation will be offered by Pastor Rex Arnold of Centerpoint Church, and our Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Lloyd Dodd, who is here with the Knights of Columbus tonight. So if you would, please rise for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If you would bow with me as I pray. God, you are good and your mercy endures forever. We give thanks for the many years of prosperity with which you have blessed our city. We ask tonight that you would guide tonight's meeting. As the council and these citizens gather to conduct the business of government, would you grant them each wisdom, strength, and clarity to do the good work in this city which you've entrusted to them. May we maintain peace among us as we seek to provide a peaceful home for our people. Would you look upon our deliberations tonight, however small or large the matter, with favor and grace. Provide your justice and mercy in the carrying out of government tonight. I pray this in the mighty name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of God, of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, to the republic.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, Mr. Dodd. Madam City Clerk, may we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Allen,
I'm present.
Councilmember Wilson,
I'm here.
Councilmember Robles.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Hussey.
Present.
Mayor McNiveau.
Present.
Madam Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Do we have any reordering of or removal of items from the agenda tonight?
No additions or deletions.
All right, thank you. We do have two special presentations, and the first one we will begin with is Mr. Lloyd Dodd, if you would join us again at the lectern. He is with the Knights of Columbus. And if the rest of the Knights could come with him as well. So please present the Knights to us, and then I have a proclamation for you. And then I would like you to join us for a picture after that. All right, so whose phone was that? If you would, please silence your phones. All right, did you want to say a few words? Maybe introduce those that are here with you tonight?
We're Council 1 2050 of the Grand Terrace Knights of Columbus. We have our staff, our members here with us. I can go down the name. We got Tom, Mike, Will, Eric, Jeff, Nelson. He's one of our new members. Robert, Chris, and Richard. And my name is Lloyd Dodd.
Thank you all for being here tonight, and good that you have new members.
Yes.
That keeps you strong. That's wonderful. So tonight we have a proclamation for you. Whereas early as 1951, the Knights of Columbus has urged the United States government to add the term "one nation under God" to the Pledge of Allegiance. And whereas the Knights of Columbus was the founding fraternal organization that sponsored the statement, "one nation under God," to be added to the United States of America Pledge of Allegiance and be presented to Dwight David Eisenhower for approval. And whereas on Flag Day, June 14th, 1954, President Dwight David Eisenhower signed the approval for adding "one nation under God" to our Pledge of Allegiance. And whereas the United States of America and the city of Grand Terrace, California recognizes this Pledge of Allegiance. So now therefore, be it resolved that I, Darcy McNabo, Mayor of the City of Grand Terrace, along with my fellow council members, proclaim the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible with liberty and justice for all. And we are presenting this to you this 24th day of May 2022. So we have this very nice commemorative plaque. And if you would all join us over here, and council, if you would come with us, we're going to do a photo op. So would you like to introduce yourself, sir, who's taking pictures? Mr. Ward. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Scott Ward. He's the guy we brought in for photo op. That's right.
I'm afraid of microphones. I'm Scott Ward. I am your local representative for San Bernardino County Supervisor Dawn Rao, who I know would be absolutely thrilled to find out about this. So thank you very much for what you do in the community.
We also have for these gentlemen lapel pins in the shape of a key with the city logo on that. And so you can wear this with pride. And when people ask you why, then you can talk about the accomplishments of the Knights of Columbus.
I've got it.
All right, thank you, gentlemen, for your service. Thank you so much for being here tonight. I'm so proud that you were able to make it. Our second item on our professor's presentations, we have a 2021 annual report that will be presented by Lieutenant Brian Lane of the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department. Lieutenant Lane?
Evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council. Make sure I get this going here. Here we go. All right, as we talked about at the last meeting, this is a presentation on the 2021 annual crime report and statistics for the department, which includes the city of Grand Terrace. I will make one brief note that this report is preliminary, and that is because all of our statistics that we compile through the end of an entire year is sent to California Department of Justice and they verify and certify all of the crimes and the proper codes and make sure that everything has been statted properly. And in trying to get this report, these numbers that I have in this report are what we sent to DOJ. They're not 100% certified yet, but they're probably 99.9% good to go. So I just had to throw in there that these aren't the final numbers, but I don't anticipate things to change. So that said, here is a quick view of the workload summary. This also includes a look back for the last several years to 2011 to kind of give you a comparison of how things have been over the last 10 years or so. Jumping ahead to 2021, you can see that we are down 6% in total call volume over last year. However, we're up 22% all of the years prior. So COVID was a significant impact to the operation, and we see that through all of those statistics. It kind of worked its magic several different ways, but I think as we look at some of these numbers here that we'll highlight, if we just took 2020 out of the picture and just jumped from 19 to 21, I think things are going to be a lot clearer. So that said, one of the interesting things that I noted on there was that from last year to this current year, 2021, dispatch calls for service was down quite a bit. But what that meant was our proactive calls for service went up. So even though people weren't necessarily calling us all the time, or as much as they had been in prior years, that gave them the ability to go out and be a little bit more proactive in the community and still generated a lot of reports. Total reports for last year was 1,354, which was a 19% increase over 2020, which again is just part of that COVID phenomenon. However, if we look back to the 9 years prior to that, we were up 60%. So report taking has been increasing. So when we go out and handle our calls for service, they are not just taken and addressed very superficially. We're seeing a large increase in the number of reports that are actually taken. So they're doing investigations and putting a lot of work into the cases that are coming in. Bookings went up 29% over the year, and they were up 53% over the last 9. And I will say that a lot of the information that's included in the final annual report itself has a lot of crime analysis commentary put in there. So what's missing from this is sort of the overall department perspective on why some of these numbers are what they are. I have a little bit with some of the specific things that we'll see on the next chart, but I don't want to get into making some real broad comparisons or even specific comparisons as to why the numbers are what they are until I see what the report is actually going to say, because I don't want to be off base in any way or go down a road that leads you to believe one thing and it ends up looking like another. So I apologize for the small print, but I wanted to do a comparison with some of our local other jurisdictions here so you can see how Grand Terrace is doing compared to some of our other cities in the nearby area. Big Bear's a little bit of an outlier there, but I threw that in because the population is pretty rough, the same as it is here. So their business load is a little bit different. But if we look at Loma Linda, we can see that their numbers up here are pretty representative. Their proactive calls for service, however, went down. Their dispatch calls went up 3%. So that led to less proactivity in the city there. And they took a total of 2,500 reports as opposed to our 1,300. So they're doing quite a bit more report taking there. Big Bear Station, again, it's a little bit different workload there, but their numbers are down over the year prior for the most part. Even though dispatch calls for service went up, proactivity went down again, which is pretty consistent. City of Highland I wanted to put in there because it being in the valley here, the population is much larger, but a lot of the types of crimes that we see here in the city, we see a lot more of in Highland. But I just wanted to throw that in there. They also their total call volume or proactive calls for service went down. Their calls for service went up, and that's noted right here in this chart. Deputy reports were up 12%, and bookings were up 28%. All right, these are the Part 1 and Part 2 crimes. Part 1 and Part 2s refer to the classifications of different types of crimes that DOJ considers your sort of big offenders, which are obviously murder, manslaughter, rape, robbery, and whatnot, as opposed to the lesser crimes that we see a lot of: burglary, larceny, grand theft auto. So we'll see here that between the difference between 20 and 21, there were some large increases. Whoops. Right here, by little red arrows. And here's why, basically. So 150% seems like a lot, and even 800% increase seems like a lot. But when you're dealing with small numbers, small increases or small decreases result in large percentages. So that taken into account, we see that there was a 150% increase in the number of rapes that occurred in 2020 to 2021. Part of that is due to a lot of the reports that are taken and generated from the high school and the middle school. They're all reported out of the city of Grand Terrace. It's the same reporting district, even though they're relative to the schools. There were a number of misdemeanor sexual types of activity crimes that took place between students. And in a couple of cases, a couple of those students were listed as both suspects and victims in the same report. So where you have two people who are engaged in some misconduct, you're going to get two crime stats out of that because you have two people that are involved in that. They're both listed as suspects, so you get two charges for one incident. So that accounted, in a couple cases, that accounted for that increase right there. It wasn't that there was a huge run on those types of crimes. It was just the way that those numbers were statted, the way the reports were taken. The 800% on robbery, again, when you look at this, look at these numbers over the last couple of years, 9, 17, 8, and then down to 1 in 2020. And then in 2021, we were back up to 9. 9 is pretty consistent with where we've been in the years prior. COVID, again, we saw a decrease in that one category, which resulted in an 800% increase. So no, there's no major problem with robberies occurring here in the city. But I wanted to point those out because it's very easy to sort of misinterpret those numbers without explanation. Aggravated assaults. Again, that's another big increase here. We see that 17 to 20, there was an increase of 287%. Back in 2019, DOJ changed the way that they stat terrorist threats, which is Penal Code Section 422. That's when you make a threat of bodily harm to somebody and you have the means to carry it out. Those 422 crimes that were taken were reclassed into aggravated assault. So there was a huge increase that year and in the years following because the 422 crimes are now included in aggravated assault. Not all 422s actually result in an assault, but it's the likelihood that it could have ended in an assault. So that's what that number is representative of. And we do see some minor increases here between 20 and 21 just in those categories. And again, a lot of that is the 422 factor here. Simple assaults went up a little bit, but we saw simple assaults go up in a lot of the cities around the same jurisdiction. So that's not an outlier for Grand Terrace. Burglaries are down, which is a good thing. And I would again say that that's COVID. I think a lot more people were at home. So those types of burglary crimes that would occur during the day when people are gone were not occurring as much. Larceny is your basic petty theft type stuff, shoplifting, things of that nature. And we saw just a small increase in that over the last year, but it was down all of the years prior. So again, when you see a small number changing like that, you see a swing going from -24% up to 7%. Again, it's not an indicator that there's a major problem. So overall, the grand total, down here at the bottom, you can see where we're up, 25 to 30% in some of these, which is just a little bit of an increase over the 17 to 20 numbers here. So again, crime analysis people, once they get the numbers back from DOJ, they have a way to sort of put their finger on why those numbers either go up or down. And if need be, or if anybody's interested in it, once that analysis comes in, I can provide that back to the city. Here's that same part one, part two comparison. This is the city of Loma Linda, so you can see how they fared next door. They saw also a large increase here in rape, and some moderate increases here between robbery, aggravated assault. Again, that 305% was indicative of that change in 2019. And all of these numbers have some keynotes of major legislation that was enacted. So in 2017 or 2014, Prop 47 was enacted. Prop 47 reduced a lot of felonies down to misdemeanors. Back to 2011, we had AB 109. That was prison realignment, and that shoved a lot of state prisoners back into county control. Prop 57 in 2016 and 64, those were again parole for nonviolent crimes and stuff. Decriminalization of marijuana is in there. And then SB 54, which impacted the ability for our corrections division to work together with ICE with regards to illegal immigrants who were charged with crimes being deported back to Mexico. So all of this legislation over the years has had some pretty major impacts on law enforcement in general throughout the entire state. I also found a comparison here to the city of Colton. So down there at the bottom, that's going to be our closest neighbor here between 20 and 21. They saw some pretty significant increases. These are just the Part 1 crimes. They didn't break out their Part 2s. So they went down a little bit in robbery. They went way up again in assault. Burglaries went down, and I would attribute that to people working from home. Larceny went down, and auto theft went down. So Colton, it seems, had a pretty decent year just in terms of the year over from 2020. But I still think Grand Terrace is doing much better in these areas here than a lot of cities that are around us. Just a quick graph of the number of deputy reports taken over the last couple of years, and you can see last year we saw a 19% increase in the numbers of reports that were taken. Proactivity was up, but also reports went up. Here's a look at, over the course of the year, the times of day that most of these calls come into us. So this is pretty reflective of people's work schedules throughout the day. And it's also results in how we staff and schedule our deputies. So we assign them to certain shifts at certain times of the day to sort of coincide with their peak report taking or call taking times of the day so that we've got as many people out there as we can. But obviously the peak comes in between 9 and 10 o'clock, and then we see that sort of, that bar graph go back down again. So that's our peak sort of later in the evening. This is always an interesting discussion point. It's one of the big questions that we get asked, why does it take you so long to get to a certain call? Well, we can see that of the priority calls that are measured in here, and the descriptors of what a priority call is, and a priority of 1, emergency call, priority 2, that's all over there on the left. But basically, an emergency call is something that we have to stop what we're doing and get somewhere fast. You know, that's going to be our first thing that we do. That's lights and sirens. It's going pretty fast. All the way down to a priority 4, which would be maybe you get home and you find your garden hose was taken, you know, something like that. So we see some numbers that are pretty consistently on the increase here between priority 1s through 4. Not so much here in the priority 1s and the priority 2s, but certainly 2 minutes to 5 minutes on the priority 4s. It seemed to take us a little bit longer to get to some of these calls. But what I would suggest is, and this is dispatched to on scene, so by the time when the deputy gets the call to his screen, which could be 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 15 minutes after the call was originally made, the lower the priority, the longer that call may wait for a deputy to become available, or what the dispatcher will do is they will break that deputy and send them to that. So you're going to stop what you're doing, you're going to go handle this other call, and you come back and finish the other one later. So we see some increases here in our times to get to some of those priority 4s. But the reference that I would make to that is, once that deputy gets on scene, that's kind of where the rubber hits the road. On emergency calls, we saw a 20-minute decrease over those, which basically, I think in 2021, there was a lot of time spent at some very significant emergency calls, and that seemed to go down a little bit this last year over 2020. Our priority 3s and 4s, we're actually spending a little bit more time there on those calls. So they may be lower on the end of the spectrum in terms of seriousness, but when the deputies are getting there, they're spending more time with those folks. They're probably taking more of those reports, doing a little bit more investigation, and actually, you know, providing some service, which I think is welcomed by most. For collision data, 2020 to 2021, the numbers look pretty good until we get down to DUIs. So in 2021, you can see that we had 12 over the year before, which was 4, and a lot more citations written. 2021, we really focused a lot of attention on traffic here in the city. And we've had a couple operations using that crime suppression money the Board of Supervisors gave us to really focus on traffic in general. And I think those numbers are reflective of 1 or 2 of those operations that we had. So fortunately for the city, and we haven't heard what the final decision has been yet, but with regards to the OTS grant and actually getting some of that Office of Traffic Safety money to put towards traffic-related enforcement, I think we're on the right track. I think things look good, but we should be hearing something probably in July. And hopefully the award of some of that money will be put to good use. And that calendar year starts in October. So we'll hear in July, hopefully, that we have some of that, and we'll start using it in October. So I think these numbers will support moving forward year after year, continuing to receive those OTS monies. So I think we're looking forward to that. And finally, this is the chart that I do monthly. I sort of track the key priority areas for the city here. It's a little busy, but it covers the entire year. Basically, we have stops, a number of traffic stops that are in the blue bars. Again, this is when we really started with the traffic, January and February. We hit it pretty hard. Then we see a decrease, so that kind of normalized. People were used to us being out there, and we sort of hit a sweet spot with the level of enforcement that we're doing. Site percentages, we stayed relatively consistent here with our site percentage, ranging anywhere from 32%. I think we hit 36%. And then right here in November, we hit 53, is it? We had one of our operations in that month. So we saw a lot of citations come out of the month of November. So that increased that percentage. Yeah, 53.2. We saw a little bit of a decrease in the numbers of contacts with homeless and transient. We've had a lot of attention given to us here in the city by the actual Hope team. So they've stolen some of our statistics, and they've actually been able to help some of those folks that we come into contact with on a regular basis. So they don't always make it into my stats, but the Hope team is out there. They come into the city on their own quite frequently, but we do actually have them scheduled to work here a couple times a month. Both Mike and Brandon will come out and they'll spend a full 10 hours here in the city just doing Hope business. So they're doing a great job out there. They actually, I think Brandon was telling me that they got housing. They got somebody to accept housing, and it had taken months to get that done. So the number still stands in terms of the point in time count. I think we're at 3 or 4, somewhere in there. But I think we're down, we're -1 now because they got someone some help. And Palm was an issue up at the top of Palm and Honey Hill, an issue up there at the top of that cul-de-sac with a lot of sort of late evening and late night activity with cars finding their way up there and disposing of a bunch of litter and just creating a nuisance for the folks that live up there. So we put some attention into that area. We knocked it down to 0, and we kind of walked away from it for a little bit, went back up, sent them back in there again, and I haven't heard anything in the last month or two, but in December, we had 0, so we knocked it down, and I have seen few, if any, citations come out. It's not because we're not up there, it's because the people aren't coming back. So I think we made our point. Hopefully the residents are happy with the fact that they're not getting inundated up there like they were with some of that activity. But our folks are still making that as part of their rounds and hitting up there as often as they can. So I think things are looking pretty good. If there's any questions specifically that you have of any of these numbers, they can be a little dull, but I'll do my best to answer them for you.
I have a tangential question.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know that residents at the top of Palm have made their complaints about what was going on, which led you to focus. Is it something that you like residents to let you know if there's a trouble spot so that you can focus in an effort in that area?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, had we not received that complaint, we probably wouldn't even know it, especially on that road because it's such a off the beaten path kind of a street unless you're looking for it or know it's there. A lot of the people that we contacted up there were from well out of the area. They come here from great distances to go up to that point. And if we don't know that's occurring, obviously we're not going to spend our time there. The limited resources are a factor for us, and I wish we could be everywhere, but we can't.
Right.
So we need everybody's help in letting us know where these trouble spots are, and we'll go take care of it.
Okay, so this helps you pinpoint and coordinate your scheduling.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Absolutely.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Lieutenant, for the report. Mine's on, I don't know what part of it for the drug problem, because everybody knows that my son's Riverside PD and their big issue with fentanyl.
Yeah.
And I know San Bernardino County just did a big illegal marijuana grow over there in Newberry Springs. So what's the drug problem, or if and how much do we have here in Grand Terrace?
Well, it is a problem. It doesn't necessarily make the charts in terms of Part 1, Part 2 crimes. But I would say that most of the transient homeless people that we find are in possession of small amounts of narcotics, whether it be marijuana or methamphetamine. I have not heard or seen any data that suggests that there's a fentanyl problem here, or that we've come across, a large bit of that through our daily business. And I think we probably would if that were an issue, just because of the dangers that fentanyl itself, brings. But yeah, marijuana, I'm not even sure I would call that a drug anymore, the way things are going. But certainly methamphetamine is still out there. Every now and again, we get large caches of cocaine. There's a lot of pills, ecstasy and MDMAs and all that kind of stuff. We still see that pretty routinely in our traffic stops. And we do stop a lot of cars here in the city, and a lot of them are literally passing through. They're coming from Riverside, going into Colton and San Bernardino. So I wouldn't put that on the residents here in the city, but people that we do come into contact with very frequently have illegal narcotics on them.
Thank you.
Councilmember Allen.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Lieutenant, for that report. So I want to ask you about the traffic collision data. I noticed that you had collected data on DUIs. Were you able to collect data on how much speed was involved in the collision data? And with that said, how are the speed limits we have in our city on surface streets and such? How do you feel about those, and how do your deputies feel about those speed limits? And can you offer us any recommendations or ideas?
You know, we do track primary collision factors, and there are a number that are recorded during an accident investigation. To be honest with you, I wouldn't say speed is a huge contributor to the number of accidents that we have here. Certainly, there are some, but it is just a contributing factor, and in many cases, there are more than one contributing factor. These are just the statistics that is recorded through DOJ that we get back. So we see these numbers a lot more frequently. I can certainly send you some data which might zero in on speed as a specific factor for you. I don't have them with me here. With regards to just speeds in general here in the city, a lot of the citations that I'm seeing now are not for speed. The biggest citation violation is stop signs or stoplights. People are just rolling right through those stops, most of them on Mount Vernon. There's a couple down there, I think Pico and Van Buren, that people don't even realize there's a stop sign there for whatever reason. They just kind of keep right on going. So those are key spots for us. But that is far and away the largest single violator that results in citations for us. So I wouldn't necessarily say speed is crazy, but there are those folks that do tend to push that quite a bit. And where we can write citations for speed, we do. We have to take into account conditions and basic speed law, which basic speed law anywhere in the state of California is 25 miles per hour unless otherwise posted. So where you have other postings, that's the speed limit, but it may be less depending on the conditions. So the folks that we have out there that are doing traffic are trained in traffic, and they know how to enforce it, and they know how to cite for it, and I think they're doing a great job. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
All right, further questions? All right, seeing none. Thank you so much for your presentation.
You're welcome.
Some of it was good news. And,
I think it's all good news.
I appreciate you bringing that forward.
Yeah,
Thank
you
you.
bet.
Next on our agenda is the consent calendar. Consent calendar items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They are to be acted upon by the City Council at one time without discussion. Any council member, staff member, or citizen may request removal of an item from the consent calendar for discussion. Are there any requests to remove items at this time? Councilmember Allen.
I just noticed that some of these are for readings. Are we going to take those out and have them read for second readings and things, or do we just pass them?
Mr. City Attorney.
Yes, after the motion and second, I'll read the title of the
Okay.
ordinances.
Okay. All right, seeing no wishes to pull them off, do I have a motion for the consent calendar?
So moved.
And a second.
Okay, so Councilmember Robles, motion, Councilmember Allen, second. Mr. City Attorney?
Yes, we have two ordinances being adopted via the consent calendar. The first one is titled An Ordinance of the City Council of the City of Grand Terrace establishing regulations for urban lot splits and two-unit developments in accordance with Senate Bill 9. The second ordinance, when I get to it here, is titled An Ordinance of the City Council of the City of Grand Terrace adopting amendments to regulations of accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mr. City Attorney. And tonight, we have the return of our electronic voting. So are we ready to go, Madam Clerk?
Yes.
All right, please vote.
Wow, that felt weird. Motion passes unanimously with council members Allen, Wilson, and Robles voting yes, Mayor Pro Tem Hussey voting yes, and Mayor McNamara voting yes.
Very good, thank you. So we'll move to public comment. Are there requests to speak during the public comment for items not on the agenda? Okay. So this opportunity for members of the public to comment on any items not appearing on the regular agenda. Because of restrictions contained in California law, the City Council may not discuss or act on any item not on the agenda, but may briefly respond to statements made or ask questions for clarification. Also, items may have a brief response from staff to questions raised during public comments, or an item may be requested for future meeting agenda. Madam City Clerk. All right, Johan Gallo.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Johan Gallo, 22808 DeSoto Street, Grand Terrace. I wanted to address the issue on the council and the mayor considering dispensaries for Grand Terrace. I have a real concern over that, especially given our limited resources for law enforcement. I know I've worked for over 5 years now to try and increase our budget, to increase neighborhood watch and all the other things involved. And to put a dispensary up here when we have 4 in a near vicinity of Grand Terrace doesn't seem like it's very worthwhile to do. California's already found that because of all the taxes, I think it's about $14 an ounce for marijuana in taxes. That what's happened with all the taxes they've added to marijuana, it's driven it back underground. You saw all the news exposés on Lancaster and the big pop bust they had up there. And to think of the things that we're doing to consider a dispensary up in Grand Terrace just doesn't make sense to me. We look at the robbery in San Bernardino where a security guard was killed. We understand dispensaries have to provide their own security. They just had a robbery in LA that got away. And so I do have some real concerns that the city would even entertain getting that on the ballot. I think there's other things that we need to do to generate more revenue in our city. I realize that dispensaries do generate money, but in the end, what is it going to bring us? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gallo. I appreciate you coming tonight and sharing your perspective with us. Our next speaker is Juanita Odenbaugh.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. My name's Juanita Odenbaugh. I live at 21811 Vivienda Avenue in Grand Terrace on the west end. I would like to thank the city manager for following through where the last city manager left off in regards to the much-needed construction of a wall at the West Coast Arborist. Looking forward to much-needed improvements of this business on the west end of Grand Terrace. However, the large piles of logs and broken up wooden pallets that are there, their newly leased adjoined property that the city did not even know about until my mom and I had a meeting in July with the then city manager. Anyways, these large piles have been there well over a month or more. Would you like to live next to these piles in your neighborhood? Because big piles like that manifest rodents and such other things, okay? And silly question if you want that next to your house, because you, Doug Wilson, You, Jeff Allen, you, Mayor McNabo, voted yes for a very large trucking business down below where I live. And I want to know that since you decided that, there's been ongoing issues. Ongoing issues, exactly what they are. They keep on going on and on. They're the same thing. You need to fix them. And there's things that were presented for you to say yes to, like there's supposed to be a hotline for us to call. There's no hotline. There's never going to be one. No, zero tolerance, no trucks in residential areas. That's a joke. Look at your past stuff that he's done already. Now you're giving this gentleman rights to just build a road and go through our neighborhood to build it. And you didn't even know what was going on. This is getting more ridiculous. Even this Sunday, he was there. There's no business on Sundays in the residential area. He needs to be notified of all these violations. But you know what he does now? Because he knows that you don't have the staff to support his business. So he takes advantage of everything that he can. Because he knows, again, you have lack of staff. Just like you didn't know West Coast Arborist was leasing a property next to their business. Now you're exploring to go into the cannabis business. Well. You want all the piece of the money, right? You go on to trucking, and now you want to go into cannabis. All to see the monetary benefits. Well, you're going to see some benefits, but I want to know, do you think this trucking business is going to open before November 2023 or after? I hope it opens up before, because when all mayhem breaks up with all this semi-truck and everything, the voters will be reminded of who voted yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Odenbaugh. And Mr. City Manager, could you address the issues that are not being watched as far as the CUP for the construction site?
As far as I know, we are following up with any issues. We have cited the developer as he's violated and has code complaints that he has resolved. The event she's talking about on Sunday, I'm still following up on. And the West Coast Arborist thing, we're working with them to get that area cleaned up and mitigated.
Okay, so how in the future will you look at the O'Brien project so that it doesn't end up becoming something that you have to follow up on, that maybe they truly get the idea of what they are supposed to be doing?
As events occur, he is being cited at $500 per citation, per event. And if that continues, then we will look at his conditions of approval and see if either modifying them or adjusting what happens there. And again, we're also looking at additional signage, should be going up this week or next week along Barton Road for trucks. So we're making the efforts we can to keep everything out of that area and keep it in the spot where it's supposed to be.
All right, thank you. Our next speaker is Bobby Forbes.
Thank you. Just to follow up, Bobby Forbes, Grand Terrace, to continue with Juanita as far as the trucks and the road that was rebuilt, per se, the curbs are all black. You can drive right down the west side of the street and not have a clue that there's a 100-foot cliff 6 inches away from that black curb. They need painted, they need something. It's not complete. All the reflector signs are down. They need them back up. Some of them were already down. Some of them the road crew took down. But it is dangerous, and I drive that street all the time, and in the dark, it's really scary. So besides the no truck signs, there needs to be a sign of some sort up closer to Barton Road or between Vivienda and Walnut that says no thoroughfare. The road doesn't, it dead ends or something, because you can't go under the bridge anymore. 50 cars a day go down there that we watch, or sometimes we take videos of, go down, have to turn around and come back out. So that's something else along with the no truck, the various no truck signs that we are anxiously waiting on. So that's one. I'd like to thank the Sheriff's Department. I interacted with, I believe, Sanchez last week, over 2 homeless people in town. I believe there are at least 8, not 3, in town. And I try to interact with code enforcement and the deputy as often as I can, because I take pictures so that I can kind of keep track, because I know you can't always. And I don't want to spy, I just want to know who's in town. So thank you very much for that quick response. He got back to me right away, and I believe reached the 2 people I referred him to. 22300 Barton Road, where the fire was, formerly the Abbott House, where has been boarded up. Your red signs are still there. There were people there supposedly doing cleanup, but I guess all they did was board it up because there is trash everywhere, and that's a hazard, in my opinion. And I know the builder is doing a great job next door, but I think he needs to take care of that too, please. I got a call from my next door neighbor last week asking me if there'd been a truck stuck in front of our house because his utility line pole from the street was pulled out from the house. I know that there was a truck in front of my house hesitating. I told him to call Edison, but I didn't see the truck get stuck or back up or anything, and I wasn't dressed to go take a full picture. So, lastly, this is a really important thing for me and the community. We need to come to some kind of an agreement regarding lost and found pet signs. Not everyone is on the internet. I had at least 3 animals get returned to their owners because of my signs that I put up illegally for the pets that were found by people in town. All of those animals lived in Grand Terrace. The signs, let's get them dated, let's talk, let's have a workshop, have me come up to your office, but please, something needs to come to an agreement. It took 5 years to get yard sale signs legal. Let's get something done for the residents' animals. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Forbes. Appreciate your comments. Mr. City Manager, I know you'll follow up with Ms. Forbes on these items, okay? Any other requests to speak during this time?
No, Madam Mayor.
All right, we'll close public comment and move on to our agenda. We do not have any public hearings. We have no unfinished business, so we'll move to new business. The first of which, item 13, adoption of resolution submitting a transient occupancy tax to the city's voters at the November 8th, 2022 election. This is presented by our city attorney, Mr. Adrian Guerra.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I will be presenting the proposed transient occupancy tax resolutions for council consideration. 2 notes. Number 1, this would require 4/5 approval by the City Council. And second, and I'll reiterate it throughout the presentation, this would be a tax that would be imposed on guests staying at a hotel or Airbnb or something of that sort. It would not be a tax on the residents. So just want to point that out. So let's begin. State law allows a city to adopt a transient occupancy tax. I'll call it a TOT for purposes of the presentation, to be imposed upon the privilege of occupying a room or living space in a hotel, inn, tourist home, or house motel or other lodging. Tonight, the proposed TOT would impose a TOT measure as a general tax. I'll get into that a little bit later. If adopted by the voters, the TOT would provide a maximum tax rate of 10% of hotel charges. And I note 2 things there. Number 1 is state law does not provide a maximum or a limit on how high the tax can go up. So we put this in as the basic of what we normally see from other cities. If the council wanted to go higher, we certainly can. The downside is sometimes that would scare off a hotel from coming into a city. But again, that's a policy call for the council. The second thing is the way we are setting up the ordinance is that this is a maximum in the ordinance. You, as a council, can adopt a resolution, assuming the ordinance is adopted by the voters. You can adopt a resolution imposing the tax anywhere between 0 and 10%. So long as we stay under that cap, the council can do what it wants via resolution. So the ordinance only sets a cap. Currently, we estimate if it were to be adopted later this year, maybe $10,000 a year of revenue currently, because we do not have a hotel, but we would estimate $250,000 if we were to get a significant hotel in the city. The TOT would, as I was saying earlier, we would be able to adjust the tax rate by resolution in the years to come. So we could start out at 8% and go up at 9, 10, whatever the council wants, so long as we stay under the 10% cap. And as a reminder, all taxes must be submitted to the voters for approval. So there are 3 resolutions that are being proposed tonight. The first one is calling the election and also requesting that the measure be submitted to the voters for consideration at the November 8th election, and requesting that this item be consolidated with the statewide election being held on that date. The second is authorizing direct arguments and requesting an impartial analysis from the city attorney. And third, an optional resolution authorizing rebuttals. So the ballot question, we currently have it, and I'll read it for the record shortly. It cannot be any longer than 75 words. It must include the amount to be raised annually and the rate and the duration of the tax to be levied. And it must be a true and impartial synopsis of the purpose of the proposed measure. Must be in a language that is neither argumentative nor likely to create prejudice for or against the measure. So what we came up with is, shall the measure establishing a general transient occupancy tax imposing a maximum tax rate of 10% of hotel charges upon guests staying in hotel as defined and generating approximately 10,000 current estimate to 250,000 if a major hotel is developed within the city of Grand Terrace in annual revenue until ended by the voters be adopted. That'd be the question. And after I'm done with the presentation, one of the questions I will ask the council is whether they're comfortable with that, whether they feel that needs to be revised or clarified in any way. I'd really appreciate the council's input on that. So the second resolution authorizes but does not require all council members to write arguments concerning the ballot measure. It also sets priorities for choosing of arguments. So the way the resolution is drafted right now is that any one of the council members may write an argument. 2 members can team up to write an argument. If we have 3, then, as you know, that would trigger Brown Act, so we would have to put that on an agenda, and the council can have a discussion on that future meeting about the actual arguments. Note, the city council may instead authorize council members to write. You can designate 1 or 2, and if 3 or more, it's subject to the Brown Act. The third resolution authorizes rebuttal arguments to the primary direct arguments. These are optional under state law and are allowed at the discretion of the council. If the council does not desire to authorize rebuttal arguments, then the council should not approve this third election resolution. So the last is procedures for submission. We require 2/3 of the city council, meaning 4 council members, to adopt the resolution to submit this measure to the voters. Passage of the measure will require approval by a majority of the voters, 50% plus 1. The taxes would generate revenue deposited in the general fund, and it's available for any general governmental purpose. The taxes are considered general taxes, and again, it has to be adopted by a majority of the voters. The estimated cost of sending this measure to the voters is approximately $15,000. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm going to go back to that slide regarding the ballot question in case any of the council members had any comments or input. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
So the estimated $10,000 is Airbnb?
Yes, we wanted to put something in there to capture what we may have existing. So we're estimating about $10,000.
But we don't know what we have existing.
Exactly, we don't.
Okay, thank you. Questions for staff? Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. On this, you said we could, say if we go up to max of 10% on the tax, but seeing a hotel struggling, can we lower the tax so they could get clients?
Yes, so the way it's set up, the council can adopt a resolution allowing anywhere between 0% and up to 10%. So if you feel like that would be an incentive for a hotel to come in or guests to go stay in the hotel, you could lower it as low as you like, under 10%.
So times are good, we could do 10%, but if we go in recession, we could lower it down to 1 or 2.
That's correct,
Right.
yes.
Do you know how many, 'cause I think Colton tried this, to vote for this, and I don't think it passed, but do you know, our surrounding areas, Loma Linda, anything, do they have the same tax?
My understanding is yes. Most of the surrounding cities do have it. I'll defer to the city manager regarding Loma Linda.
Yeah, all the surrounding cities have it. Colton, Loma Linda, San Bernardino, Riverside. I think we're the only outlier just because we don't have hotels. So typically, this is part of a process of getting a hotel in town, is figuring out a way to generate this tax.
All right, thank you.
Further questions? All right, seeing none. Are there requests to speak on this item?
No, Madam Mayor.
All right.
Madam Mayor, I have.
Oh, wait, before we do that,
I thought you were asking him if he had any more questions.
Councilmember Robles has a question, sorry. Didn't mean to rush past that.
Looking at this from a policymaker, it looks like we're spending $62,000 to make $10,000. It just, the language just doesn't seem, that 10,000, I didn't even know it was from an Airbnb. It just, and I know Colton had put theirs on maybe at least 2 times, and the voters voted against it, even though it's not a tax on them, it's tax on people coming and staying in the hotel, so. And then what are they going to poll? Are they going to poll what people think of what the tax should be? Or, because the reason I ask is when we did a measure, and we did a little bit differently. Some of the council sat interviewing the actual tax consultants. And so they would poll how much give there was in the community for, a tax, that kind of thing.
I'll defer to the city manager on that.
So the standard tax is 10%. The communities around here all have 10%. The Los Angeles and Palm Springs as well, the vacation destinations. The only exception to that is there's 12% in Las Vegas because they can get away with it. But that's, as far as if you're asking about the rate, it's the standard rate across the area, and it seems to be the norm. Nobody's had the nerve to raise it because I think it creates some competitive issues in the marketplace.
Yeah, I don't think the voters know that, though. Okay, thanks.
Okay, further questions of staff? All right, seeing none. Public comment, please. Thank you. Bobby Forbes?
Thank you. So I don't know of any Airbnbs in Grand Terrace. I know they're in Redlands and Riverside, and many of them up on the mountain. But I do know that we have a proposed motel hotel for Grand Terrace. So is that why this is coming up? Or would this have already been coming up? So I'm curious. I don't use hotels anymore, but my daughter does, and she tells me a lot of the fees are outrageous. She lives in Las Vegas and travels a bit, but I don't think that the general public will have a clue or understanding of what to say, and they're just going to say no. So I think it has to be worded in a really special way to have the people understand. And there's probably going to be a lot of protests regarding having a hotel here. We've already heard that to some degree. I won't say yay or nay on my side, but I think it's inevitable and might be a good thing for the community. I hope, if it comes. But that's my 2 cents worth. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Forbes. Mr. City Attorney, did you want to address that question?
Sure. I will tell you, I've been here since late 2018, and when I first joined, that was one of the comments internally about adopting a TOT. There was nothing, any specific hotel at that point in time being considered, but I think, at a later point, there were consideration of a hotel being brought in, and so there was that, well, the city probably should get ahead of it if it can, to have the TOT adopted potentially by the voters before the hotel is in place, so that if they do take effect, we at least have the TOT there to generate revenue.
Can I ask a question or a comment? So what if they say no? What does that mean? If they vote no, then what?
Then there's no transit occupancy tax.
Correct.
That's what that means.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Forbes. Mr. City Attorney?
Yes, and one follow-up. So on the consent calendar, the council did adopt a consultant agreement. The consultant agreement would be hired to provide outreach, inform. We cannot advocate. We can only educate the community, and so that consultant would be part of doing that.
All right, any other requests to speak on this item?
No, Madam Mayor.
All right, we'll close public comment and bring it back to council for deliberation. And I will ask specifically, Mr. City Attorney, we have these 3 resolutions. Well, we have the proposed transit occupancy tax measure, the 3 resolutions. And did you want us to take those resolutions separately from, and then also separately from the tax measure consideration?
No, I mean, I think you could adopt all 3 at the same time. The only clarification I would request, Madam Mayor, is looking at the second resolution regarding the setting or authorizing the drafting of direct arguments. Currently, it's set up for authorizing any or all of the council members to prepare a written argument. I don't know if the council is okay with that for now, whether the council wishes to designate 1 or 2 or 3 to prepare arguments. That would be my
So
only.
we can have that as part of our deliberation then?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, I will start off just by saying that I think that if we move forward with this, that we need to give the opportunity for rebuttal. And that is my concern. Are there any other comments that council members would like to share at this time?
I would like to leave it open. Anybody can contribute something in writing without violating the Brown Act, and we can look at them.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I agree with Ms. Robles. Somebody submit and we go over it, and we have a resident wants to put a rebuttal or even a comment, but, you know, then we pick one of us if we want to, I mean, who first brought this on there? I think it was, brought this agenda to our attention. Was it you, Mr. Allen?
No, it was the city manager.
I did back whenever our previous city manager, I mean, I think I did actually have this as a agenda item, requested item.
It was on the agenda on our project list for quite a while.
Yeah, it's been before, I remember.
Councilmember Wilson, any comments?
Madam Mayor, I'm not exactly sure what the difficulty is here. This is not a tax that's imposed on the citizenry, which of course everybody would be against, or a good deal of the population would be against. They've proved it time after time. I'm not exactly sure what our concern is whether or not we can educate them well enough to understand the nature of the tax. You call it a bed tax, it's pretty simple to figure out. Most jurisdictions clamor for an opportunity like this. And is this not a flexible situation? In other words, once we set it up, can't we also change it? So to me, we ought to just start out with a 10%, and I mean, I'm 100% in favor of that, and then.
Well, I think the way that it would be set up is if it passes, we have the cap at 10%, and then it comes back to the council for us to determine where we want to start. So what's in there is just the cap that we would be able to move up to without it going back out for a vote.
And then the market drives it, is what you're
Yes,
saying.
yes.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of hotels in this area, so I think the competition's going to be decent enough, and people would rather stay in Grand Terrace than they would in San Bernardino. So, I don't know, it seems to me that this is a good starting place. Let's go ahead and get it over with.
So is that a motion then?
It is?
Okay. So you like the proposed tax measure, is that your motion? And then what about the resolutions?
As presented.
All right, thank you.
Mayor,
Councilmember Allen.
I'd like to ask Councilmember Wilson, are you for all 3 resolutions?
That's what I said, yeah.
Okay. And then, so I'll second it for the sake of discussion. I do have a question about the resolution authorizing rebuttal arguments. And is the reason we have to have a resolution authorizing a rebuttal argument is do we have to, like, pay for that money?
No, it's optional.
Have
And
a
so
rebuttal
this,
argument?
this, creating the option for, or creating the ability for somebody to write a rebuttal is us saying, you know, we want to make sure that,
Yeah,
that
Right
voices are heard.
yeah, sure, of course.
Nobody, now, that doesn't mean somebody's actually going to write one, but there's the opportunity for them to do it. And if we don't pass the resolution, there's no opportunity for them to do it.
That's correct.
Seems like a rebuttal ought to be part of the whole thing. I mean, it ought to be allowed anyway without having to have a resolution. But yeah, I agree with having rebuttal arguments in there if somebody wants it.
Okay.
And I did second, so.
Okay, any further discussion? All right. We'll vote when the city clerk tells us we're going to. We have a motion by Councilmember Wilson and a second by Councilmember Allen.
And again, the motion is for adoption of all three resolutions.
Yes.
Thank you.
We're ready?
Yes.
Please vote.
Excuse me. Motion passes unanimously with Councilmembers Allen, Wilson, and Robles voting yes, Mayor Pro Tem Hussey voting yes, and Mayor McNamara voting yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Introduction of the FY 2022-23 proposed budget. And this will be presented by Terry Shea, Interim Finance Director. Who's looking quite a bit like our city manager, Conrad Bolowich.
I'm here to, you know, you didn't get the better looking one, but anyway, I'm here to tell the story, and then Terry will back up the numbers when we get to that point.
Very good.
So this is the good part of the year when we do the budget, take a look at where we're at and where we're headed. So we had each department kind of put their pieces together and chopped and pared things back so that we can get a good representation and provide the services that the citizens are looking for. So our vision and goals, we hit just about every box with the budget on anything that financial and fiscal, but we really do want to present a community that is active, vibrant, providing the services that our citizens are looking forward to, but doing that in a fiscally responsible way and living within our means in that process. So there's some highlights on this, and as we get into budget, I know you guys have done this several times now, but to make sure there's that distinction between the funds and what we call the budget balance. One is kind of like a checking account where you're going to keep your money, and the other one is your monthly budget at home, to use an analogy. And sometimes we need to make sure we keep those straight. So the city's general fund has about $6.2 million in it. About $1 million of that is bond proceeds for capital projects, and about $660,000 is an offset for a land resale. That leaves a total fund balance, a beginning balance of about $4.5 million, which is, I guess if you kind of look at the analogy, that's when our savings account at the beginning of the year. We're looking at revenues coming in of about $7.6 million and expenditures of about $7.6 million. So we targeted a balanced budget. We have a whopping surplus at this point of $10,000 and we'll go over some of the assumptions and projections in there as we go. So our sales tax comes in at about $1.1 million. Sales tax is up 6.7% in the last quarter, primarily driven by fuel costs and the county pool, which essentially reflects sales from Amazon sales and our pass-through on the online sales. So as we project, we really did not use the full 6.7 as our projection. At some point, gas prices have to come down. At some point, people have bought everything on Amazon, so that will slow down. And from a real practical standpoint, we are seeing inflationary pressures begin to curtail spending on some of these things. Last time we met with our sales tax consultant, we saw that some of the sit-down dining establishments in town are not doing as well this quarter as last quarter. And the assumption is that if you're, you're paying $100 for a gallon, a tank of gas, that doesn't leave a whole lot of money to go out and have dinner. So we're starting to see some of those inflationary pressures already. So we've been very conservative on the sales tax component, and like I said, we've put it at about $1.1 million. Property tax, which is our largest financial contributor, is about $2.9 million. Property tax was up 6.7% last year. Sale prices across the board went up 14.6%. And then, as we know, property taxes are reassessed when a property sells at a new tax rate. So as right now in a hot housing market, there's lots of sales. The sales are at a high dollar value. So this is a very good property tax year. But then again, seeing inflationary pressures coming on, rising interest rates, we are using a lower number and not projecting that we're going to continue at 6.7% sales. So we are being very conservative in our revenue projections throughout the process. And then some of the things we are adding. So we do have a little bit of money. I know we restructured some of our operations, some of the management positions we're not filling, and we're using that money to do a couple of little different things. One of them is we're proposing to bring on one full-time maintenance worker and one part-time engineering intern. So both of those people will be focused on physical infrastructure things. Right now, our public works crew is running from fixing thing to fixing thing to fixing thing. With an additional person, it'll give us a chance to really create a schedule and have things on a true maintenance schedule and take care of things as they come up and not fix things when they break. So that's one of the things we're looking at.
To clarify, they will fix it when it breaks, but you're trying to stop it from breaking so that they don't have to wait to fix it.
I'm trying to do preventative maintenance
Thank
rather
you.
than drag, have the car towed into the shop every month.
Thank you.
So we are trying to, and that person ideally would be doing some preventative work and being ahead of that. One of the things that it's not on here, and with the sheriff's lieutenant discussed earlier, we did include some LiDARs, the modern version of radars, for our patrol officers so that they can do traffic enforcement and write some tickets and do some speed control. And we have some streets, a lot of streets that fortunately they're wide enough and people enjoy that wide street and make the best use of the speed out of that. So we do have some money in there for that. From the finance side, we are planning on keeping Terry because we like him so much for another 6 months. In that process, we went out and to the market and really looked for a finance director through 2 hiring cycles. And what's come up is if you can't find somebody to flip a burger at McDonald's, you're certainly not finding anybody with a skill set to be a finance director in the marketplace. So we have a couple of employees in our finance department who are very skilled. Christine, who has a great deal of accounting and finance background, but she needs some time to really get that transition to become a city finance director. So we're keeping Terry for the next 6 months through Christmas time to kind of keep her get her trained and up to speed on what we need to do. So we'll keep that an internal position. And then we're also move one finance person up to backfill that. The biggest one, and this probably is not the right forum to delve into that. We do need to bring that back, and we will bring back, is our PERS liability. So the city has an operating budget of about $7.6 million. We have a PERS liability of about $5.9 million. That means 70% of our operating budget. If we didn't do anything for a year and just paid off that liability, that would be 70% of our budget. With that, we have an annual debt service on that. Imagine, for an analogy, PERS is a credit card bill that we have to pay on every month, and that is 10% of our expenses, which is a significant amount. At almost $760,000 a year. So. one of the things that we are looking at this year as part of it and going forward, in the past, we've really used resources to build up our reserves. Reserves right now are at 64% of the annual budget. Typically, you want to see somewhere between 60 and 70% in reserves, especially for a city that has primarily property tax and sales tax as its revenue stream, because we get those payments in one big lump, and we need that reserve to carry us between payments. Those of you that get monthly payments from someplace, monthly income, you know what it's like to get to the end of the month and try and make it stretch. So with that, I think we have our reserves are in decent shape. We have a couple of property sales that we're looking at. We have a couple of other activities that anything that we come up with coming forward, I'd like to be throwing that at the PERS expense and getting that unfunded liability down. We didn't build anything into it this year. My proposal is that if we come in under budget on anything, when we come in under budget this year, that we're able to put money against that, and then any revenue that we end up that's unbudgeted is also placed against that PERS liability. Because if we can get that $760,000 down, that frees a lot of operating money for us to do the things we need to do. And just paying down that credit card bill is very important. So as we go through, you see the total revenues for all the funds is $12 million, $12.5 million. The expenditures is $14.2 million, and you're going to say, wait, I thought he just said we have a balanced budget. We do. The difference is the ARPA money that we got, the COVID money that we got last year and this year that we're planning to expend primarily for street improvements and physical infrastructure improvements. So we're essentially pulling that money forward from last year and then expending it this year, which is why we'll actually be expending more than our revenue, because we're using that revenue that we've saved from last year and have already discussed on what the plans are for that expenditure. So let's take a look at the general fund. We can kind of run through, and our revenue has been fairly consistent across. If you add the two across, we're somewhere around $4 million year in, year out. It bounces around depending on which fund and how it's booked. But we're somewhere about $4.5 million, which is about where we are today. The only, where is he? Oh, revenue, there's just kind of everything is consistent all the way across. We're seeing our sales tax, like I said, we're being very conservative on sales tax increase. We're being very conservative on property tax increase, with no rash assumptions that anything great will happen this year. And as it is, we had some big revenue. That was that $2 million, the ARPA money that we saw last year. So that offset, this is without the ARPA money for this year. So our revenue is fairly consistent, fairly straight line across once you pull out that ARPA money. You can see where our money comes from. Property taxes are by far our largest, and sales tax, and we've got a bunch of bits and pieces for franchise fees and other permits and fees that come out of that. Expenditures. We did have in the labor contract, there is a increase built in. So there is, every year there's what's called step and creep. So as people are employed, they get, every year they get their step increase. And then of course the entire package creeps up by a percentage on whatever's negotiated. So that reflects both the step and creep. There's about $100,000 extra in there on materials. That is specifically for to expend for park maintenance, street maintenance, those type of things. We're looking to really get ahead of. We've got a great infrastructure. A lot of effort's been put into creating a good infrastructure. We want to maintain and protect that. And then, of course, those LiDAR units are thrown in there too. The biggest increase across the board It's this contractual service, and I got a reason for it. We're reflecting accurately some of the expenses we've had before. Like I said, part of that is the ARPA, part of there's some money for the Commerce Way project that was set aside that was not expended that we're carrying through. There's some CARES money that was not expended between the two of them. That's about $900,000. And then there was some contractual issues that were over budgeted last year for the Sheriff's Department that we're bringing back into line since our Schedule A was a much more reasonable amount this year. So So we are seeing this number higher primarily because of those reasons. And then the rest of it is fairly consistent as we go down. And then, like I said, the biggest difference is tied back to that ARPA expenditure. And then you can kind of see what's happened on the expenditure side, on what's gotten bigger, littler. We're payroll, which is an every year hit. Materials that we talked about, and then those contractual services where we have the ARPA and the other expenses tied to it. And then, so for what we're looking at is presenting this evening. Would be great if everybody approved it tonight. We understand that there'll probably be some discussion, and we'll bring this back next meeting and probably the meeting thereafter so that we can have the budget in place by July 1st. And, well, there's the schedule. So this, we've introduced it tonight, open for discussion, any further deliberation, and then if we need to, we'll do it. We've got 3 meetings to adopt it. And then, any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Bolowich. Questions for staff? Councilmember Wilson?
Is there any nexus between our contractual number versus salary stuff? I know we are still doing, maybe part-time or contract items that are taking care of some of the stuff that we had as salaried personnel. Can we kind of get an idea of what the numbers are in there?
So our biggest salary contract is we're contracting for Public Works, who's a part-time person. On a annual cost basis, it isn't really much of a savings, but we are saving the insurance and the PERS liability on that.
Amen.
So in the long term, there's, what's that?
I said amen.
So we are, there is a net savings, and not year to year, but overall there is a net savings on that. Terry is a contract person who will be going away in December, as much as we love having him here. So there is a savings on that. One of the things that we did reflect, and last year and the year before, there were some fairly extensive city attorney fees because we did a lot of stuff with them. There was some property transactions, some other things that were under budgeted for several years. So we're trying to budget a true number for that this year as well, and that's reflecting in the contract piece.
Thank you.
All right, further questions? All right. Seeing none. Do we have any requests to speak on this item?
No, Madam Mayor.
All right, so we'll bring it back to council. Did you need a vote on this going forward, or is this an introduction
This
and
is-
questions and?
This is an introduction, an opening for questions. I would encourage, as you go through this, and some of this is a little mind-numbing and dry, unless you really are an accountant. As you come up with those, please reach out. We can work through this and get those questions answered. If there's big issues or questions that you feel that we need to address as a group, then we can bring those and address them to the group. But for the kind of to pick
So
through the
between
minutia-
now and the next meeting, that it'll come forward. If we send our questions, then you can include that in your staff report next time.
We can answer those questions between now and then, and if there's just really detailed questions, I'll be glad to answer those as we go, yes.
Okay. All right, so this is a receive. And we'll be back next meeting. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, we have no requests for future agenda items, so we'll move on to council communications, beginning with Councilmember Jeff Allen.
Thanks, Mayor. The only thing that, that happened between the last meeting and this one was the final community cabinet meeting with the Colton Joint Unified School District. And it was the last one of the year. And so there was, Dr. Miranda gave an update on how they're moving forward with the plan to create a system, what they're calling the system of success for the students. And then Dr. Peterson gave an update on the local control and accountability plan and the continuing impacts of the pandemic. The school district, and Colton's not unique in this, but they did bring this forward that they've had a real issue with hiring staff. I mean, it's across the board in a lot of school districts. They're having that real problem, but they've really worked hard to hire staff and implement their plans. So, and then they had, some entertainment from some of the student body, and this is all via Zoom. Yeah, so that hopefully will be the last one. They said that starting next year, they would really like to bring them back in person like they used to have them, like we used to do right over there at the auditorium at the high school. So, but that was that. And I also took an opportunity to drive over on the west end, and it's the first chance I've had to drive on Terrace Avenue since they rebuilt it. I was pretty impressed. Thanks, Mayor. That's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Allen. Councilmember Doug Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to make a comment, and then I have some other documentation in relation to a property situation for us that needs to be signed and notarized. Extremely disappointed in the escrow company, the way they're handling this, and I think we should entertain maybe looking at another escrow company to deal with stuff, because if that's the way they do their business, it's pretty lousy. I appreciate the sheriff's presentation about how we're going about, trying to keep the city safe. Not easy thing to do, that's for sure. And I heard from a fellow that I know recently, and fortunately he doesn't live here, he lives in San Bernardino, but he said he had a break-in as late as last night. And, it happens all the time, and in this case, he had a gun, and of course, the gun was taken, and so now it's in the wind and all that stuff. So I related to him that we had over a period of about 15 or 20 years, personally, a couple of break-ins, and they're terrifying experiences, there's no doubt. So I think the citizenry of Grand Terrace, if you see something, say something. You see something a little bit odd, or cars sitting around when they really shouldn't be there, make a phone call. So what? If they get angry or if they get befuddled about it, then move. We can't take the chance that we don't protect each other. So, and that's about all I've got, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Wilson. Councilmember Sylvia Robles.
Thank you. I don't have anything about meetings, but we'll sort of do. I've been a member of the Grand Terrace Women's Club for about 19 years. COVID has really impacted also our membership and our activity. I just want to let people know that we're looking for members. We meet the third Wednesday of the month at 11 a.m. The cost of lunch is $15. The Grand Terrace Women's Club is on Facebook, so you can see about how to make a reservation. I have to say, I had to retire at a young age, and I wasn't ready for it. And let me tell you, this club really added very much to my life, and it still does. The companionship of the ladies is just awesome, and the opportunity to work for raising some funds for the city is a fabulous opportunity. So if anyone's interested, and they'll also be at the Community Days, manning a booth. So come out and kind of test the waters and see if you like us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Robles. Mayor Pro Tem Bill Hussey.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a great opportunity to meet with a young lady and also with mental health in the county. And this young lady's a freshman at Grand Terrace High School, and the name of their club is Teams for Change. It's a club at Grand Terrace High School whose members are dedicated to create a positive change in our community. And what their goal is for tobacco use and how to control it in the city. And, you know, they went on about how, you know, 80% of young people who ever use tobacco start with flavored tobacco products. And then one of their things that they want to do here, this is their idea, in an effort to reduce illegal sales of tobacco products to minors. More than 140 communities in California adopted a strong local tobacco retail license, TRL, ordinance. Municipalities with strong TRL ordinance, where their before and after use sales data is available, the rate of illegal tobacco sales to minors have significantly decreased. And they're going on saying that the annual fee for this ordinance can be used to enforce the regulations for tobacco sales. And I told her, I go, well, you know, in 2019, because right before the COVID thing hit, the big issue was vaping and young people dying from the vaping and the bacteria. And I did a future agenda request, and it got approved 4-1, and it was for the ordinance prohibiting the sale of e-cigarettes and flavored tobacco products. So I don't know if that's on your burner or something, but I did tell the young ladies that, because I guess they rated the overall cities in San Bernardino County, and the highest grade was Adelanto with a C. Grand Terrace got an F. So I'm like, Adelanto got a C? So I was pretty surprised, but yeah, pretty much everybody got F and D's, and well, Colton got a D. Even Loma Linda got a D. And then part of the thing is advertisement, and I did happen to see on the Omnitrans bus stop they had a tobacco thing for kids. So it's pretty interesting. They invited me in their school today to talk about it. So what I really liked and enjoyed about it was young kids coming, you know, they had a goal in mind, and, you know, there's only 6 of them in the high school, and for those 6 to stand up to try to help, it's really remarkable, you know, because pretty soon, you know, they're going to be called all kinds of stuff, and, you know, and nerds, whatever, that's what she says, but they want to make a difference. So that's, you know, it's admirable. You know, I was really impressed with what they got going. And one other thing, I won't be here for to honor Memorial Day because I'll be flying to South Carolina tomorrow to see my grandson. So I know our city has a great way to honor our fallen, and I will be going over there in South Carolina, you know, to give my respects. But, you know, I just want to, you know, thank the men and women, you know, the families who are still here from their fallen. And, you know, war, as they say, is, you know, hell, but, you know, also, you know, people think about the fallen who on the battlefield, but we still have men and women coming back from this new war that are dying, you know, because PTSD and things are happening. I know my dad, he died from Agent Orange 20 years after he came back from Vietnam. So it's, you know, it'll take your toll on you. So, you know, God bless those families, you know, are still suffering or missing loved ones. And another thing, you know, sad news, I mean, this is, you know, my prayers and thoughts go out to Texas for the families that lost their little kids. You know, it's a heartfelt thing, and, you know, I know law enforcement was there responding fast, but, you know, what do you say to a parent? There's nothing you can say to a parent. And, you know, there is evil out there in the world, and, you know, like these 6 kids that are standing up, not saying that they're fighting evil, but it takes people to stand up to do what's right. And, you know, if you see anything, you know, even kids, you know, if you see anything at school or something happens, make sure you tell somebody. Or, even parents, if your kid has issues, there's help out there, mental health to help them, and talking to everybody. And so, heart goes out to those families. So, God bless our men and women in the service, and, God bless their families, and God bless Texas. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. The only thing I was going to share was that we do have Memorial Day coming up. And when you're enjoying your time with your families and friends over the 3-day weekend, please take an opportunity to pause and reflect on those that gave the ultimate sacrifice to protect our freedoms so that we could get together with our friends and family and go about our business and gather in environments like this and share our perspectives. And so our memorial service will be on Memorial Day, Monday. It starts at 11. It's at our Veterans Freedom Park at the end of Pico Street. So I look forward to seeing you all there. And that's all I have for tonight. So we'll move on to City Manager Communications.
Well, Community Day is coming up, June 4th, 3 to 9 p.m. at Richard Rollins Park. So we haven't had it for a couple of years. This is a restart, so it probably won't be as richly attended or as many booths as we're used to, but it's a chance to restart the tradition and get things back to normal that we're looking forward to. And then we'll be showing the movie Encanto for those of you that are into Disney movies or have family members that are, and I encourage everybody to join. Also on the June 12th will be the vaccination clinic at the dog park, and we'll be renewing dog licenses there as well. Vaccinations are open to anybody from any community, and then Grand Terrace residents can do their dog licenses. And then the high school parade will be this coming Thursday, beginning at 5:30 p.m. and kind of winding its way through the streets on its way to the high school. And so if you're out and about, give those graduating seniors a wave for their accomplishment. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. City Manager. We have no closed session. And so at this time, I'll adjourn to the next regular City Council meeting, which will be held Tuesday, June 14th, 2022 at 6 p.m. Any request to have an item placed on a future agenda must be made in writing and submitted to the City Clerk's office, and the request will be processed in accordance with council procedures. Thank you all for being here and sharing your perspectives. We are adjourned.